Welcome back to the Colts Brawl podcast, you guys. I am your host, Michael Terrazas, joined by me, like always, Cody Felger. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, man. I'm excited for another week. It's cool, man. It's March now, so free agency happens this month. Only, a certain amount of days away now. I believe it's like 12 days. I think it starts on the 18th. So,
Yep.
Dude, I'm pumped, man. I'm excited. I'm ready for – it's actually going to be cool because I'm going to be – chilling where it's warm when free agency frenzy happens. And so I'm very, very excited for that. And yeah, man, there's a lot of cool dominoes that have happened even since we recorded our last podcast. Stuff throughout the league that I think will kind of impact, some free agency stuff that we're going to talk about today, and also some draft stuff. And so it's going to be a good podcast. I'm excited, man, for to talk today just about all things Colts.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Well, you said it right there, talking about the draft. We got some mock drafts coming in, some predictions for free agency. So last time we talked, man, we were talking about the combine and, all those prospects that showed out and everything. And, we got to continue that because right now we're going to be talking about the defensive line. I watched it. I didn't just take too many notes on the linebackers, the corners, the safeties, because I don't really consider those big needs for us right now. I'll mention a few guys, but for safety, I really don't see us drafting one. So let's get into these edge guys. We're focusing on the edge. Chase Young, Caleb Von Chasen, Yetur Gross-Matos, Julian Okwara, Terrell Lewis, Curtis Weaver, Darrell Taylor, Joshua Uche, Khalid Kareem, and Anthony Jennings all did not work out at the combine. Another one who did work out, who kind of hurt his draft stock big time, was edge rusher A.J. Epineza from Iowa. That was one of the worst combines I've seen from a projected top 20 pick, and he is now predicted to be out of the first round. I've seen quite a few post combine mock drafts, and none of them had AJ Epineza in it. That's what was surprising. So he'll definitely be falling. Had a poor 3-cone workout, didn't go the best way. His 40 was a 5.10, and I just don't think he did anything to help his stock at all. So. That's him right there. Other guys who really, really showed up: Bradley Anai, 4.92. Kendall Coleman, this Syracuse product that our very own Robert Mathis has been working with. He ran a 4.96. Alex Highsmith from Charlotte, definitely a small school, 4.7 flat. That was a real good 40 time. Other guys, the best one for the edge guys, James Smith-Williams from NC State, 4.62. That was the fastest one among the defensive linemen. So you look at some of these guys and you see the good 40 times. You look at A.J. Epineza. If he was once projected to be this high round draft pick, but now he's falling, I don't think that's a guy you draft. I don't think that's a guy you draft to be your main pass rusher, is what I mean. If you want to bring him in like our Jabal Sheard, if you want to bring him in that kind of role, I think it's definitely possible. But I do like some of these smaller guys like Alex Highsmith. I like the speed. I like the bend. James Smith-Williams, he's shown some promise in the run game. Not quite sure if he offers too much in the pass rush department. I really wish I could have got to see Darrell Taylor because that's a guy that I'm kind of high on. Terrell Lewis actually did not run the 40, but he did work out a little bit in the drills. Chase Young, of course, like I said, didn't work out. So when it comes to these edge rushing guys, I don't expect the Colts to be taking one like in the first 4 rounds. I think they maybe take one. I'm not too sure if they take one in the draft at all. That's my thinking. Because, when you look at who we might sign in free agency, what our defensive line group looks like now, you also got a camp body and Gary Green. You have options. And I don't really consider defensive linemen to be one of the main positions of need. Because, we got Kamoko Toure. He's got potential. Ben Banigou, Justin Houston, Al-Qadim Muhammad. We got guys, So which one of these defensive ends, if you could predict that the Colts took a defensive end, which one would you be most interested, Cody?
Yeah, Michael, it's always interesting to me. So you mentioned AJ Espinoza really had an awful combine. And it's interesting to me always when guys like that, he was projected, first round pick there for a long time, and then he just completely bombs at the combine. It's always interesting to me, I guess, to see guys like that, and just wondering, is he a guy that has that potential, but maybe he, I know a lot of people who kind of have like that test anxiety, so it's like we're fine every other time, but like when everybody's looking at you, or whatever it is, you kind of freeze up and you don't do as well as you normally would do if it was just, a normal thing. And so it's just interesting to me to see how far he does fall. And if he does fall, beyond where we think he will, if a team like the Colts would give him a chance, because I'm of the belief that you can never have too many pass rushers. I'm always of the belief that you need more pass rushers. But you're right. I don't necessarily think that it's, a position right now when you look at all the other positions on the team that you have to address in the first couple rounds. I believe the Colts have enough guys. And depending on what they do in free agency, if they, go after and sign a Jadeveon Clowney or what have you, one of those guys, does it kind of push it off your draft board for this year? But I'm always interested in guys like that. I do believe that the Colts shouldn't probably address that within the first couple rounds for sure. I believe there's other needs that are more pressing that the Colts need to address now. Where pass rusher, you can kind of get away with it. Yeah, you got some guys like Justin Houston, and then if you bring back Jabal Sheard, they're both on the other side of 30. So you need to address it at some point. But I just believe that right now, as it stands, it's not something you have to address. But there's definitely some guys in the later rounds that I think that you could for sure, look at, and you mentioned, you got Gary Green coming back. He was a draft pick last year. Didn't really do a whole lot. Was kind of on the practice squad for a while. Went on, one of some other teams' practice squads, and so you just got some guys, some young guys that you think you can work with. And I think honestly, for me, if I was sitting in that GM chair, I don't know if I would really address it as far as the draft, investing more draft capital into it, because you got two young guys you mentioned, Kamoko Toure, Ben Banigou, who both are very young players, and they both showed flashes. And so I think after this year would be a big, if neither of those guys really pops off in this next year and they're fully healthy, then I think it kind of tells you next year you look at addressing that pass rush position. But yeah, as it stands right now, I wouldn't address it early. But that's just my opinion on it. Maybe Chris Ballard surprises us and takes a pass rusher and edge rusher in the first couple rounds. I don't know, but if you're asking me, I wouldn't. But that's just me.
Hey, I don't mind myself some Caleb on Chasen. I really don't. If we got him, like Chris Ballard is in a situation at number 13 that whatever he does, like I wouldn't necessarily be mad at. Because he's getting an elite player.
Right. And edge rusher, when you talk about – sorry to interrupt you there, but like when you talk about, some of the pillars to winning and being a winning organization, obviously it starts with the quarterback, which I think the Colts need to address. It always say, protect your quarterback and get to their quarterback. And so I definitely agree with you there. If Jason's on the board and all those quarterbacks are off the board, man, I would not have a problem with it.
Definitely, man. Because like I said, Chris Ballard isn't so I know, like, if he were to take Caleb on Chasen, there would be so many Colts fans out there. Oh my gosh, you didn't grab a defensive tackle. You didn't grab a wide receiver. Oh my gosh, off with his head. Like that. Getting Caleb on Chasen is going to change the defense. Let's just say that.
Right.
But taking it, early, I'm definitely with you if he decides to surprise us or something. And like you said, with Jadeveon Clowney, I did like the idea for a little bit, but I don't necessarily think, because we remember Jadeveon Clowney. We saw him for twice every year. I still remember those knucklehead plays he had against the Colts.
Right.
Jumping off sides, hitting the quarterback in the head. Even in Seattle, he had those. That's where mental discipline comes in. And that's something that Chris Ballard values very much, because those plays right there cost you games. And remember, when Indianapolis squeaked out of Houston in 2018, that was because of Jadeveon Clowney. Luck hard counted him and he jumped right off sides. It's just like, come on, man, watch the ball. That's what they teach you. Watch the ball. And I don't necessarily, I would be hyped if we got him. My only concern with him would just to be limit those little mistakes. You're in year, 6 now? You need to start limiting those mistakes. Moving on to the defensive tackles. They also had a really good day at the combine. Javon Kinlaw, he had tendinitis. He did not participate. I believe he was probably the only one that did not participate. We had a very big group of defensive tackles. So obviously we're going to start with the best one here, Derek Brown. He recorded a 5'11", 40. That's actually a pretty good one for a defensive tackle his size.
Yeah.
Well, Neville Gallimore, another guy Colts fans are high on, 4'7", 9. That's a good 40 right there. He showed some good athleticism in the drills. He showed some good bend, some good discipline, some good punching. So he definitely showed out. Ross Blacklock, 4'9", 1. He had a little bit of a mishap in one of the drills when it came to bending, but then he ended up correcting that issue. He definitely showed some good power, some good strength. Guys that stood out to me, Khalil Davis from Nebraska. He showed me some good things with some speed. I like some of the bend, the quickness. Marlon Davidson, when he was projected to be an edge rusher, which is what he played at Auburn, he was projected to be like a 4th-round pick. Well, since he's moving inside, going to defensive tackle, he's projected to be a 1st-round pick now because of that power he has, because of that athleticism. And it doesn't surprise me that they're moving him to defensive tackle, because when I looked at his body, I saw that game between Auburn and LSU and Auburn against Alabama. I looked at him and I was just like, he's showing out for in college, but when you get to the NFL with those athletic tackles, those fast tackles, that stuff I don't think is going to work too much. And now that he's moving to defensive tackle, I think he has a really, really bright future in the NFL. Fotu, 5'16", that's kind of expected. We don't really think of Lakey Fotu as a fast guy. Jordan Elliott, some people have him as a 4th-round pick. Some people have him as a 1st-round pick. His 40 time was 5:03. He showed basically a lot of good things. And basically from what I saw from the combine, he is a 1st-round pick, in my opinion, or a very high 2nd-round pick. He showed good bend, good agility, good concentration. Feet was under control, kept his feet underneath him. They showed some new drills in the combine this year, and he definitely showed out in those. Just talking about 40 times now, James Lynch from Baylor, 5'01". That was a pretty good one for him. Jason Strobridge from North Carolina, 4'9" flat. Laurel Murchison, 0.05. Rashard Lawrence 5.08. Rashard Lawrence had a weird combine. When he runs, he's a little bit out of control. The arms are doing too much. The arms are all over the place, especially when he was doing his drills. I mean, when I was watching, you can even hear Daniel Jeremiah talk about it, and Cameron Jordan, who was one of the special guest analysts for the combine. They said that his arms were under control. He needs to get more under control. That way he can run faster. I think his stock went down a little bit based on that. But other than that, man, we had a big group of defensive tackles, definitely talented defensive tackles to take, whether if you're in the first or second round. What are you looking at when you look at this draft class of defensive tackles?
Yeah, man. And that's something that the Colts are going to just have to completely overhaul is really that defensive line group. I think that they'll probably, hopefully, unless they decide to randomly keep him around, probably get rid of Marcus Hunt. Was a guy who came in Indianapolis 2017, no expectations at all. And I thought played really well for the first couple of years with the Colts. But, he's over 30 now, and he's a guy that I think the Colts, he really regressed a lot in 2019. And so, I think for the Colts, they just need to get some youth in there. They really need to get some guys who can rush the passer. I mean, that was honestly, if you look at last year, that was one of the biggest flaws in that defensive line group. Is like really nobody could go get after the pass rusher or get after the passer. And that's something that you'll need from that 3 technique. I think that's the biggest position on the defense that you need to address is that 3 technique. And so, I know a lot of people have projected, one of those guys like Javon Kinlaw, one of those guys to go to the Colts and follow the Colts at 13. And I honestly would be perfectly fine with it because it's something, man, where, when you have a good 3 technique, when you have a guy that can get after the passer and, disrupt those passing lanes, it changes a defense, similar to what we were saying with the edge rusher. I honestly think that, if you're a quarterback, you're probably wanting to face an elite pass rusher, say, one of those guys, as opposed to an Aaron Donald type player, because, when you have a pass rusher, you can step up into the pocket and you can avoid that. But when the pocket is collapsing within you, it just messes up everything. And so I'm fine with the Javon Kinlaw, Neville Gallimore. If you choose, I think you could probably trade back and get Gallimore still, and get another draft pick, whatever you want to do there. It honestly all depends how, the first 12 picks before play out for the Colts. But man, if the Colts get Javon Kinlaw, I'm totally okay with that because he is just an elite athlete. His motor, man, is just relentless. He's one of those guys, man, that I think will be a very, very good pro. And I think he'd fit really well within the Colts defense. And so, I also like Ross Blacklock quite a lot. I like kind of what he brings. It's interesting. I think, and we'll kind of get into this later on, kind of when we're talking about our mock drafts and stuff like that. But, I think he's a player that has a lot of upside, and I think the Colts could take him in that second round if he does indeed fall. If he falls to the Colts at one of those second round picks, and I think he could be a really disruptive player if, there are just a few things he needs to clean up. But, the thing I love about all these guys is the potential is there. It's just, you got to get with some of these guys that are a little less polished than others. And so, so I think the Colts just need to address with one of these, first couple rounds, they need to address that defensive line position. Especially, man, especially that 3 technique, if you indeed don't bring anybody in free agency, or if you choose to address the the other defensive tackle position. I know there's been a lot of hype around. What's his name? The guy from Houston that's really good, defensive tackle. Oh dang it, his name is escaping me right now, but he has just been fantastic. DJ Reader, that was his name. DJ Reader is a player that I think could potentially be one of those guys that, you don't think about, but he's a really good player. He's not necessarily like when you think of the top free agents, he's not on that list, but he's a young player. He fits kind of the mold of what Chris Ballard wants to do. And heck, you're stealing him away from division rival. So I think he's a guy that you could potentially draft and then, address that 3 technique position and boom, there you go. you have you fix that issue all in one offseason. And I think the Colts have the cap and have the draft capital to do that. And I think they have to. I really do. I think that was the biggest Achilles heel of this defense last year. Now, you can argue whatever, cornerback, safety, whatever it was, but I honestly think that you're only as good as your pass rush is. And I believe that if the Colts do make a few moves, free agency, draft, I believe, man, their defensive line can go from one of the worst to, maybe even one of the best. Who knows?
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that, because when it comes to these defensive tackles, you got to get them. And when it comes to Javon Kinlaw, I've kind of stepped away from Javon Kinlaw. I looked into some of his medical history, and I'm looking up and down, and now he's dealing with tendinitis. And I'm like, oh, man, and we're already suffering injuries already as it is. And if you're in this offseason where you have needs all over the field, and one of them is quarterback, you cannot take a player at 13 and he becomes an injury-prone guy. I get the upside. I get the talent. The talent is a top 5 talent. No doubt about it. But in this draft, in this offseason, you have to be 100%. You got to go to his pro day, see his medical, see all that stuff. Just get a good read on everything. And if all of, I would still take Javon Kinlaw, because that's just a talent that you just don't pass on. You just don't pass on that talent. So if Chris Ballard and his staff do their due diligence, they feel comfortable where he's at medically, and I have no problem with taking him. Not at all.
No, not at all.
There's not even a hesitation. Neville Gallimore, I think Neville Gallimore is a guy that the Colts would love because he's versatile. And Colts love those versatile guys. He can play nose tackle. He can play the 3 technique. He can play both spots, especially if you're rotating in and out and there's a mismatch that he may have. He can go to each spot. And that's what, players in the NFL, that's what you got to revolve around, versatile players. You're going to start seeing them more and more. So Neville Gallimore is definitely a great guy. Ross Blacklock, my guy. Gigantic hands. I shook his hand one time. He basically swallowed my whole hand. As a freshman, first team All-American, he clogged up the middle. He drew triple teams. I definitely see great talent. Last year he still showed great things, even though coming off of an ACL tear the year prior. So I can't wait to see what he comes to be in his second year. I think if I had to choose, I think I would take Ross Blacklock. I think he is a surefire. I think Neville Gallimore has potential to go in the first round. I definitely think he does. And Ross Blacklock, I think he will be there at number 34. And I think you got to get him. When you look at the drop-off from defensive tackles from Derek Brown, Javon Kinlaw, Neville Gallimore, Ross Blacklock, you don't see a whole lot of guys who impose their will. You see fast guys. You see guys that can do some good pass rush. But you need guys that can pass rush and clog up the middle. You don't see too much of that in the draft anywhere else. I looked at Jason Strowbridge. I saw a little bit of that. I looked at many guys, Jordan Elliott. I'm of the belief that in one of the first 2 picks, you got to go defensive tackle. That's just where I'm at with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That is something that the Colts have tried to address a little bit when they drafted Tyquan Lewis a few years ago, but he just has not shown anything for you, and he couldn't stay healthy. So you got to address it. I mean, you keep a couple guys. I think you keep, obviously you keep him and Lewis, and then you keep Grover Stewart as well. But I mean, honestly, other than that, I'm totally fine if you scrap the rest of the defensive line and you kind of rebuild that unit as far as the interior goes. And, maybe you keep around a Danico Autry as a depth piece. But overall, man, I don't think that you should look at really any of those guys. You could argue maybe more for Grover Stewart, but I don't think any of the other guys, at least for that 3 technique, you should rely on as a starter come week 1. So yeah, I'm totally on the same page with you there. I think you've got to address it. It's a huge need. It's a big hole. It's your biggest Achilles heel on that defense right now. And I think you live and die, man, by how good or bad your defensive line is. So agree with that.
I'm all for cutting Marcus Hunt. Save you $5 million. Save $5 million. Let that carry over next year or something. Marcus Hunt, man, that was a bad year. Last year was a bad year. You did not hear his name whatsoever.
I got benched.
Yep. And Grover Stewart, I like Grover Stewart. I think he should be more of the nose tackle rather than the 3 technique. He showed some good things last year. Danico Autry, that's where he should be. I'm really excited, like you said, with Tyquan Lewis. He just hasn't had the time to get on the field. His rookie year, he showed great things. In that game against Dallas with that offensive line, he had 2 sacks up the middle. He showed good things. But, man, he has got to get healthy to show it. I have no doubt, getting these guys healthy, that we could potentially have one of the best defensive lines in the league. Right. It's just a matter of staying healthy. I mean, you look at Tyquan Lewis, Danico Autry dealt with some stuff. You look at Kamoko Toure. You look at Justin Houston had a little problem. Jabal Sheard had a little problem.
Yeah.
And it was a lot to go to. So that's where I'm at with that. And moving on, man. We got predictions. Signings and free agency and a 3-round mock draft. So the floor is yours, Cody, and I will be going right after you.
Do you want to start with free agency first?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Cool. Okay, so like I said, I think that the Colts need to address – I love me some Grover Stewart. I think he's, really flashed this last year. But I want to, continue to build depth on that defensive line. And so I want the Colts to sign DJ Reader. I think it makes sense for both sides. I think he's a space eater. He's a guy that, is a very good overall player. He's young. He's exactly fits the mold of what Chris Ballard wants to do. I think DJ Reader is definitely a must sign for me. I think the Colts will sign him. This is just, it's not – there's no indications that there's any interest or anything yet, but I think that it makes too much sense for both sides. Then you get 2 good players who can rotate with those 2 guys. And then, it helps you. It helps you basically. Then you just got to address that 3 technique in the draft. And I think that that's what the Colts should do. And I hope that they do it. That's kind of like my take on it. I think that makes too much sense on that defensive side. I think, I also think, a guy that we talked about on the podcast before, Michael, is Eric Armstead. He's a guy that might actually be allowed, the 49ers might actually let walk. And so he's a guy that I think if he becomes available, I think the Colts should pursue him and pursue him hard because if he becomes available, he's a really good player on that defensive line. I think he could fit right into that 3 technique. And, maybe you don't have to go and draft a guy in the first couple rounds then if you do sign a guy like Armstead, or maybe you do. Maybe you just continue to build that depth. But either way, I think he makes a lot of sense for the Colts. We already mentioned Jadeveon Clowney. I'm kind of 50-50 on him. Like you said, like he's shown a lot of flashes, but like you said, he's also shown a lot of, boneheaded penalties, a lot of inconsistency as far as, it's crazy, like, to me, because he hasn't had double-digit sacks. He's had 9 sacks twice in his career, but he's never had double-digit sacks. And so are you willing to throw all that money into him? I think he's a good overall player. I think he's a pretty good run defender and also a good pass rusher. I wouldn't call him elite, though. So, I feel like you would have to throw elite money at him to get him to come to Indianapolis. So, do you feel like he's a guy that also I don't think he's played 16 games in his entire NFL career. So is it a guy that you feel comfortable with playing 14, 15 games maybe and throwing all that money at. I'm kind of 50-50 on him. There's also some tight ends that I think that would be interesting to see the Colts potentially sign. Obviously, Hunter Henry, a guy who's dealt with some injuries, but still a young, good tight end. And also Austin Hooper, who the Falcons are going to let walk and test free agency. So I would personally go Hooper just because I feel like there's more of a injury history and risk with Hunter Henry. But it makes sense for me to address that tight end position, especially getting a guy that is more of a receiving threat. And I think that's what Eric Ebron was for the Colts for a couple of years there. But obviously he's not re-signing with Indianapolis. And so it makes sense for me to draft one of those guys. Both of those guys are very good receiving tight ends. And so I think it would fit really well into that. And they wouldn't be asked to do, they would be probably in a similar role to Eric Ebron where they're not asked to, go down and block a defensive end or a linebacker or whatever. They're more of the receiving threat. They're more of, the red zone threat. So it makes sense to me to sign any of those guys. There's some other guys, but I'm curious for you if you have any other guys that I didn't mention, or if you just want to add on to some of the guys that I mentioned then.
Yeah, man. So wait, so are you done with your whole free agency thing?
Those are just a couple of them. I kind of wanted to hear some of yours before I kept going.
Okay. When I look at some of these guys, like you say, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, I think there's some guys that when you look at money, when you look at draft, you probably got to let a couple of guys just be like, hey, this is the price we want you at. I don't feel we'll be going any higher. And, like it's happened in the past, guys are going to walk. I think those are some of those that you have to do because like you said with Hunter Henry, I'm pretty sure he's going to ask for some good money because he's going to say, look at my overall body of work. Look at what I was able to do. If I was Chris Ballard, I would be like, okay, what did you do last year? Oh, wait, nothing. You were injured. My bad. So what did you do the year before? Oh, you played in 3 games. Okay. All right. So I'm looking at the whole body of work. I don't see a whole lot. I don't doubt that you've been in shape, but are you in football shape?
Right.
I don't know about that. And then with Jadeveon Clowney, you hit on the good few points, man. All this, hasn't played a full 16-game slate, no double-digit sacks. And then I look at what he said. He says, I don't want to play for a sorry team. I want to play on a contender. Well, we want elite defensive ends on our contending team.
Right.
It can go both ways. And that's what I'm saying. I'm kind of backing off a little bit on Jadeveon Clowney because when you look at his overall production, I don't think I'm willing to throw the kind of money he's going to want. I don't think I'm comfortable because when it comes to that money, man, you got to protect it. You got to invest it in what you think is right. And I don't think Jadeveon Clowney is right for the Colts. And when I'm looking at another guy, Shelby Harris, I haven't thought a whole lot about DJ Reader because I was of the mindset that he would probably go to a team that would offer him a lot of money. Of course, Houston, they're kind of like strapped salary cap wise. But with DJ Reader, I do like what I've seen. He showed some good things, especially in these indie games. He can push, he can extend, he can play the nose tackle really well. And when I'm looking at Shelby Harris, it's kind of a little bit of the same, but I think he can pass rush a little bit better. And I think if I have this correct, I think Shelby Harris is going to be asking for more money than DJ Reader, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not bad to spend more money as long as you're just paying for the right player. So I would probably take Shelby Harris over DJ Reader, although I wouldn't be surprised if DJ Reader came to the Colts. I would still be hyped about it.
Yeah.
There's just something about players going to their in-division rival. I don't know what it is. You're looking at Byron Jones this season. He's going to go from the Cowboys most likely to the Eagles. And then last year you looked at Tyrell Williams. He left the Chargers, went to the Raiders. There's been many more guys that I can't really remember right now. We're not going to get into it, but there's always a trend of someone leaving their team going into in-division rival. Even like Orlando Scandrick, he left the Cowboys, went to the Redskins. I don't doubt it because there's just something about going to your in-division team. I don't know, but I'm definitely with you on these guys. Shelby Harris, I think, is definitely big time, and that's really all I have right there.
Yeah, a couple other guys, if they are not re-signed, I would be over the moon if the Colts got with Amari Cooper, best wide receiver in the free agency class by far. It's not a great free agency class as far as wide receivers go, but if Amari Cooper's let go, man, I mean, I think you got to jump on that. That's one guy. You mentioned Byron Jones, who I think could be a potential fit, but he's probably going to ask for a lot of money. Brandon Sheriff is a guy that I think could potentially be a fit too. Washington guard, really good offensive lineman. And it would ideally, it's not at a position that you have to address. I feel like you can get by with Mark Glowinski at right guard, but if you get the opportunity to sign a guy like Sheriff, I think you got to jump at that opportunity to improve your offensive line. And it would be great, man, if you had an offensive line of Costanzo, Nelson, Kelly, Sheriff, and Braden Smith. I mean, I think that offensive line, I think the Colts offensive line is already a top 10 unit. I think that would even boost that even more. And he's 28 years old, so he's a young player still in his prime, and I think it makes sense to me. But again, it comes down to the asking price for Chris Ballard, and if a guy like Sheriff is asking for too much money. But another potential fit there that I think could be a really good one for the Colts.
All right. So you got Brandon Sheriff coming to the Colts?
I would love it, man. I would be totally fine if they did that. If he's not asking to break the bank, man, I'm for it. I really am. I think that if you can address all of your weaknesses on that offensive line, I mean, that right side, if you look at the offensive line, I would say if it had a weakness, it would be the right side of the offensive line. And if you could shore that up even more, put a good guard right beside, young Braden Smith, I think your offensive line is set for a long, long time.
All right. So those are some good picks right there. There's some good analyzing right there, Cody. Now, I also have my predictions for free agency. I don't necessarily think the Colts are going to break the bank, so to speak. I kind of see Chris Ballard kind of nodding his head or shaking his head at Jadeveon Clowney. We're going to hear a lot about some guys, wanting to go to the Colts because of that money. So here's how I think it's going to play out. Their first signing, which I think this actually might happen on day one, I think they'll sign Eric Berry, the safety. I think it just makes the most sense. As long as the money is right, which I think it will be, $8 to $10 million. The highest I'll go is probably 12, because that's a good friend of Chris, and I can envision him giving him like, hey, yeah, let me give you a little bit more. I just think it makes the most sense for Eric Berry. And then when you look at the Colts, that's a need right there that you can instantly take away. You no longer need a safety. You got Malik Hooker, you got George Odom, you got Kari Willis, and then you'll have Eric Berry. So you're set in the backfield. Now we're starting to get to some good ones. I think he will sign Nelson Aguilar, the wide receiver from Philadelphia. And right here, I think this is where people are going to start to be like, oh, okay, all right, hey, we're getting active. I like Nelson. He has good potential. His route running is solid. I do know that he has a little bit of a drop problem. The main one that comes to mind is that Sunday night game against Atlanta. He was wide open running down the sideline, and he just completely dropped the ball. Carson Wentz put it on him, and he completely dropped it. But I think he would serve as a good fit for the Colts. I definitely think he would. And then here comes where on the defensive line, we're going to sign Shelby Harris. It came out that the Colts have legitimate interest. And when you say that they're open to bringing a big name in, I don't consider Shelby Harris to be a big name, but the way he keeps playing, he can certainly assert himself as a big name player. I just think he fits the Colts. He can do what they want him to do. He can, slow down the run game. He can affect the pass game. I like what I see from Shelby Harris. And then my last prediction, like it came with the defensive ends. I think he's going to shake his head at Jadeveon Clowney, and then he's going to look at a guy who definitely has the potential, who definitely has the upside. You've seen it both in college and in the NFL. And I just want to ask you real quick, Cody, who do you think I'm about to say?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Give me 1 second. I want to pull up some of these free agents. I want to make a good guess here. Oh, my. This could be – it couldn't be – oh, my. So give me a hint here. Is he a guy that – was he in the 3-4 scheme last year or 4-3?
I want to say – what are they in? I think he was in a 4-3.
Is it Kyle Van Noy?
No.
Okay. He was like one of the guys that I saw right away. 4-3. Good grief. Who could it be? Are you going to go Yannick Ngakoue?
Oh, no. No.
Okay. I was like,
because if the Jaguars are, I consider it petty. If they're going to be petty and franchise tag him, even though they've done nothing to want him to stay, I'm not going to trade for Yannick Ngakoue. I'm just not doing it.
Okay, that's fair. Oh, man, all the other guys are 3-4, so I'm wondering if he's a guy on this list.
He's played in 3-4 before, but I think he best suits the Colts 4-3.
Okay. Is he a younger player or is he older?
A bit of a younger player, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Dante Fowler.
No.
Oh, man. Okay.
I'm gonna give you one,
because I could be guessing all day.
Okay, I'm gonna give you one more guess. One more.
All right. Any more hints you're willing to give?
I think if I was to give the hint that I thought about, then you would ace it.
Okay, I guess what conference were they in?
He's coming from the NFC.
The NFC, okay. NFC. Well,
he's one of the guys that I'm really high on.
It wasn't Shaq Barrett, was it?
Nah. All right.
I give up. I can't figure it out.
I'm thinking that the Colts are gonna land Vic Beasley.
Oh, yeah, that's the one you talked about. How did I miss that one? It wasn't on my list here.
I was literally about to give you a hint and say he wore a red jersey last year.
Yes. Vic Beasley. That's a good one.
Vic Beasley, man. I think he can definitely get double-digit sacks. If he comes to the Colts, you look at Justin Houston, you look at Denico Autry. If you definitely bring in Shelby Harris, and then you look at Vic Beasley, I think Vic Beasley can just do wonders for your team. He has the athleticism. He has the speed. That is what Chris Ballard loves. Justin Houston isn't the athletic type, but he'll bull rush you and he'll get it done. Vic Beasley is the guy that has a quick inside step. He's good with his hands. For the life of me, I do not understand what Dan Quinn was doing with Vic Beasley in Atlanta. I don't understand what he was doing with him. God, man, I love Shelby Harris. I love Vic Beasley, man. I don't know why. The last year I was watching him because I thought the Atlanta Falcons were going to do something. I saw some boneheaded plays that Dan Quinn put him in, but then I saw flashes. And I'm just like, man, he's such a good player. When I saw that Vic Beasley would not be resigned, I'm just like, yep, give me Vic Beasley. Give me Vic Beasley. So what do you think about this free agent class that I just named? What do you think it will do for the Colts?
Yeah, it certainly would be good for that, especially on that defensive line. I think that it would, whatever route you go, you just got to get some guys in there that are going to really change your identity there on defense. And I think signing some of those guys is definitely a good step. And then you obviously have a lot of draft capital that you can invest if you want to on that defense. And, Vic Beasley's oh my gosh, he's only 27 years old. I didn't realize he's still that young. You bring in a guy like Beasley. I mean, he's got the talent that you're looking for. And he's probably not a guy that a lot of people are going to, overpay for because, there are some concerns about, he had obviously that one season, the Super Bowl season, he flashed, he showed off, he popped off. And then, besides that, he hasn't had anywhere near that season. And so I think a lot of people could kind of be hesitant towards that. But for me, man, it's like, if you find a guy like that that's done that in the past, I'm all for bringing him in, especially how young he is. He's going to be 28 when the season starts. I mean, I'm totally okay with that. He's in his prime now. And if you can tap into that, man, and you can do it for, I don't want to say a discounted price, but maybe not as much as if you would sign one of those premier free agents, I'm totally cool with it, man. I'm totally fine with that. As far as wide receivers go, I think signing Nelson Aguilar, you just need to sign somebody. You need to just continue to add competition to that wide receiver room. And I think signing him, man, could be a potential good one, and especially because he probably won't command a ton of money. And that's something that Chris Ballard's really good at, is just finding guys at more of a discounted price and some guys who can make an impact. And so I'm totally cool with that. I like this haul that you had there. I think it's definitely one that would help the Colts tremendously. And then if you add another good draft class into that, I think it definitely could boost the defense and boost that offense to another level. And who knows what will happen, but it's exciting, man, for sure.
Definitely. And I'm going to, I guess you could say piggyback on what you just said about we just need to sign guys. I am going to say that we don't just need to sign guys. We need to sign guys that are going to change the direction of this organization.
Yeah.
Because you signed your glue guys already. Pierre Desir, he showed out, he got paid. You signed guys like Jabal Sheard. You signed Justin Houston. You signed all these guys. It's now time to bring in guys that are going to change the direction of your organization. Picking up, I can't, oh man, free agents don't come to my mind right now. But signing someone little, that doesn't do it. You need to sign your guys that are going to change the direction of your organization, that are going to show out and put your name out there. So that's my quick tidbit on free agency. Now, for the last segment of the show, we are going to give our first 3-round mock drafts. For those of you to understand how we're going to do it, Cody's going to give his first-round pick. Then I'm going to give my first-round pick. Cody is then going to give his number 34. I'm going to give my number 34. And then it'll just play like, a back-and-forth game. We'll go behind the reasoning of our pick, and hope you guys like it. So, Cody, kick us off.
Awesome. Yeah. So for number 13, this has been a popular name, and I think it fits well with the Colts. I have Jordan Love going to the Colts. And this is a name that, throughout this whole process, I was like, I don't even know if he's going to get to 13. You might have to trade up and get a guy like Jordan Love. But the reason why I have Jordan Love still being available at 13 is some of the free agency moves that have happened and some of the potential moves, that have happened within the league. And I think that allows for, some of the teams ahead of the Colts to focus on another position instead of the quarterback. And so I'll kind of explain a little bit of what I mean. Obviously, I think number one, the Bengals are going to go Joe Burrow. I think that's not a question. Regardless of who they pick, it should be Joe Burrow, but if they're silly, I still think they'll draft a quarterback. And so I have them drafting a quarterback there at number 1. The Redskins have kind of been rumored potentially to be in the quarterback market. I don't personally buy it. I think they drafted a guy last year in Dwayne Haskins. I think he played pretty well at the end of the season. And they also are most likely to trade. They actually just allowed Trent Williams, their left tackle, to explore some trade options. So I think they'll trade him away most likely. And so left tackle is on the board then. And I certainly think there are some left tackles that the Redskins could potentially go after. And I think they might want to. You mentioned some of those guys, like what was it, Becton, that left tackle that just completely destroyed at the combine, had a fantastic combine. Maybe he's a guy there that the Redskins address. Maybe they surprise everybody and get a left tackle at number 2. If they don't do that, I could also kind of see them going after the best player on their board, probably going to be Chase Young. I could see them addressing the pass rusher and getting a pass rusher there at number 2. For Detroit, I think that they're going to stick with Stafford. It was kind of reported a little bit that maybe Stafford wanted out of Detroit, but then Stafford's wife kind of came out and said, we love Detroit. We want to stay in Detroit. So I think the Lions will probably take the best player on their board. They probably won't draft a quarterback this year. I'd probably Jeff Okudah or Isaiah Simmons probably there. And then the Giants sitting there, they drafted their quarterback last year in Daniel Jones, so there's no quarterback there. I think they take, one of those two, whichever one the Lions take. I think they'll take the other one. I do have Miami taking a quarterback. I think they'll probably take Tua Tagovailoa. I think that's how you say it. It makes sense to me. He's a guy who's born in Hawaii, raised in Hawaii, went from there to Alabama, and then going to Miami. I think it makes too much sense to me. I think that's probably where the Dolphins are going to take their quarterback of the future. They don't really have anybody in the roster right now that would lead me to believe they'd go any other direction. And so I have them taking a quarterback. I think the Chargers were rumored to potentially be linked with a quarterback, maybe Justin Herbert, but they just made a trade and they got rid of their tackle, Russell Okung. So maybe, and maybe they even sign a free agent quarterback. But I could see them taking a tackle there or taking a quarterback. I think, the Panthers are bringing back Cam Newton, so I don't think they go quarterback either. The Jags seem to be content with Gardner Minshew, and they also just got rid of A.J. Boye, I think that's how you say it. And so they lost a lot of their defensive players. And so I could see them taking one of the top defenders in the draft, maybe even wide receiver. The Browns obviously have Baker Mayfield, so they are not going to take a quarterback. The Raiders, I could see them taking a quarterback. It's been rumored they might be trying to explore trades for Derek Carr. So I could see them potentially taking a quarterback. But, I think that if it kind of plays out the way I think it will, I think that leaves one of the top quarterbacks. I think Jordan Love or Justin Herbert there. And I think personally, for what the Colts want to do, I think Jordan Love makes the most sense. I think he can definitely do a lot of things that would be phenomenal for the Colts. And a guy that, it would be a great fit with Frank Reich, a guy that could, really help develop him very well, former quarterback. So that's who I have at 13. I have Jordan Love going to the Colts. And that's really kind of changed. I honestly didn't think he'd be there, but after kind of seeing how some moves have played out in the last couple of weeks, I think a quarterback's going to fall to the Colts at 13.
Yeah, that's a good pick. That's a good analysis right there. There's a whole lot of ways this first round can go. So with my number 13 pick, I am going to go wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Okay. I think you need an elite receiver because you look at T.Y. Hilton, he's getting older. Paris Campbell, he's a good receiver. Zach Pascal, he's a good fourth option. Then you look at if you were to bring in a Nelson Aguilar, what is he at number 2? You still need an elite wide receiver to take over once T.Y. Hilton leaves. And the reason why I picked Jerry Jeudy is because I'm anticipating all of these quarterbacks to be taken before the Colts pick. Joe Burrow at number 1. I would suspect maybe Miami goes to Tua Tagovailoa. Dang it. The LA Chargers, they just might take a quarterback because I don't really see them signing a free agent quarterback. Hell, they might even take an offensive tackle, but I do see them taking maybe an offensive tackle, maybe later in second round. I think they'll take Jordan Love, the Chargers. I definitely think they will. And then some are asking about what about Justin Herbert? You know, you look at Carolina, they still haven't come out and said Cam Newton's our guy. They still haven't come out and said that. Cam Newton can be drafted, or Cam Newton could be traded on draft night. Literally. He could be traded. And then they could take Justin Herbert. Or what about Las Vegas? You know, there's rumors about John Gruden not happy with Derek Carr. So they could end up taking Justin Herbert and then trading him somewhere. You never know. Or maybe Carolina does draft Jordan Love or Justin Herbert, let them sit behind Cam Newton, see what they got, and then trade Cam Newton. Then you look at Javon Kinlaw. I think he just might be taken by Jacksonville because Javon Kinlaw, his Senior Bowl, that really elevated his draft stock. And when I do a couple of mock drafts, you know, before the Senior Bowl, Kinlaw was always there at 13. But now when I look into mock drafts, when I look into these things, he's getting drafted at 9. So what else do you have to take? You got to take Jerry Jeudy. I think Henry Ruggs gets taken. I think CeeDee Lamb gets taken. I think Jerry Jeudy can be an elite receiver. And I definitely think he's a guy that the Colts must get if he's there, and that's the way the board falls.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so for number 34 for me, as a guy we already talked about, I have them taking defensive tackle Ross Blacklock. You know, I think he's a guy that they could fit right in there, the 3 technique. They desperately need to address that 3 technique. That's something that we've talked about. You know, with him, the thing that's interesting about him, he showed a lot of flashes in college of being very, very disruptive. You know, I guess some of his drawbacks potentially why he would fall that far would be he's not the greatest at, you know, he's more of a gap player. He's not the greatest at like taking on blocks. And also he had an Achilles injury that, you know, he missed all of 2018. But, you know, he had a pretty good rebound year there in 2019. So, you know, I think that potentially the injury history could scare a few teams off. But, you know, I think overall he's just a player that he has a lot of the raw talent. I think he just needs it to be channeled in a way where he can improve his technique, his hand usage, and just some of the stuff that's really teachable. And I think that's something, man, that we've talked about. The Colts need to improve that interior pass rush. And it makes sense to me to get a guy like him because he is he's a guy that has really elite lateral quickness. And he's a guy that has a really high pass rush motor, and the guy that could, you know, if he continues to develop, if he continues to refine his craft, I think he could potentially be a very, very good defensive tackle in this league. I know some people might say it's a little bit high, but I think it's a guy that you see there on the board. It's a position of need, and I think that's a position that you can't afford to wait to address. I think it's a position that you live and die by, and so that's why I have him in here. I think he has a lot of rare talent, a lot of, you know, when in Chris Ballard's drafts, he looks for guys with that blue chip talent, with blue chip traits. And I think for Blacklock, he has some of those blue chip traits that Ballard would be looking for. So I have him there at 34. Who do you have, Michael?
I'm with you right there. I got Ross Blacklock at 34. Man, some people will sit there and think, well, he only played 2 years at TCU. Why is he coming out of the draft? He played 2 years, but he was on campus for 4 years. You know, he redshirted in 2016. Okay. And then 2017 came, he finally played as a freshman. Then 2018 tore his ACL. 2019 came back. So for people saying, oh, he didn't play enough in college, he was at college enough. I definitely feel his pain there. And like you said, man, he has this potential. When he gets back to his old self, remember in college, like I said, he played with current Colts defensive end Ben Banigou. And he could even say that Ross Blacklock is a massive human being. He is going to draw double teams, hell, maybe even triple teams. Well, in the NFL, probably not triple teams, but he is going to draw double teams every time he steps on the field. And that will open up guys like Ben Banigou, like Kamoko Toure, hopefully like Vic Beasley, hopefully Justin Houston. That's going to open up guys. And he doesn't have the flashiest pass rush skill set, but the more he continues to work, the more he continues to maybe trim a little weight, he's going to get there. I look at how he's able to stop the run. He is a massive human being, man. When you see him on that football, on that line, he is just a tower. And oh my God, I wish the draft was tomorrow. I wish I was the GM so that way I could just be like, okay, at 13, Ross Blacklock. There you go. I wish I could do that. But obviously, if I was to do that, the Colts would probably go 0-16 next year. But that's why Chris Bow's the GM and I'm not. So Ross Blacklock, man, you touched on a lot of it. He has this potential. He has this grit about himself. He has a good personality. He's great. He's a good person. Those guys that come from TCU, that come from Gary Patterson, those are guys that you love. I mean, look at how polite Ben Banigou is when he gives an interview. I mean, that's just how it is. And Ross Blacklock is the same way. He's a guy that Chris Ballard is going to love. So I'm piggybacking off what you said. Ross Blacklock at 34.
Yeah, for sure. For 44, this is where we're probably going to differ again because you already had the Colts taking a wide receiver, but I have them taking wide receiver Jalen Reagor out of TCU as well. So they go back-to-back TCU picks. I think he's a guy that he didn't have great quarterback play this last year, so kind of a dip in his production. But, man, he's just such a smooth athlete when you see him out there. He's so fast. He makes plays, which is something that, man, I have said time and time again. I don't care if the guy's 6'5" or 5'9". I just want a guy, and the Colts desperately need a guy who can make plays. And I think he's the type of guy. Jalen Reagor's the type of guy. He has the talent to be an elite receiver. He was elite. I think he was an elite receiver, an electric receiver in college. I think, man, just getting the ball into his hands. If you got Jalen Reagor, you got Paris Campbell, you got Nyheim Hines, getting the ball in their hands and letting them do stuff after the catch, I mean, your offense, man, is going to be electric. And that's what we see with some of those top offenses, man. They just have guys, when they get the ball in their hands, see you later. Like they go and make a play. And that's what the Colts need. That's what they desperately lacked last year in their wide receiver group. And so Jalen Reagor for me makes so much sense. He's so fast. He goes and makes plays. And that's just what the Colts need, man. And I think that they, if he indeed falls to them at 44, man, I would be ecstatic if the Colts took Reagor there at 44, just because there's so much potential there. You pair him with a good quarterback or a decent quarterback, and I think, man, he helps elevate that offense to another level, and it helps make everybody around him better. So I got Reagor there at 44.
All right. I like it. Hey, get all the TCU players to Indianapolis. I will definitely move up there. So now at 44, since we already went wide receiver, we already got defensive tackle. At 44 is a guy that I think is becoming one of the best at his position, if not the best. And I'm going quarterback Jake Fromm. No, I'm playing. I
was like, oh my gosh.
Man, I'm about to go and ask for a new co-host. No, but for real this time at 44, I'm looking at the tight end position.
Okay.
I am looking at Mo Alley Cox. You don't know if he's going to stay on the Colts much longer. You look at Jack Doyle. He's already like, what, 30 years old already, right?
Yeah, he's over 30, I think, now.
Yeah. And you're just like, okay, we need to start getting some fresh bodies in here. And if you love Jack Doyle and you want to get a guy like Jack Doyle, maybe even better than Jack Doyle, at number 44, I'm going tight end Cole Kmet.
Love it.
I decided I was in between Bryson Hopkins and Cole Kmet, but if Cole Kmet is a much better blocker than Bryson Hopkins, then I'm going to take the combination of a good receiver and a good blocker any day, because that just makes your team that much better. Cole Kmet, I didn't know too much about him going into the fall. I still didn't even know about him too much in November. When I started studying prospects in December, I looked at this guy, Cole Kmet. There wasn't too many highlights. So I watched game film, and I just saw a polished blocker. I really did. I was just like, wow, this guy is actually taking on defensive ends, linebackers, crushing safeties. And when I look at him when he gets the ball in his hand, hell, he is almost like a Eric Ebron. He does have good speed, 4.7 flat. He ran at the combine, good hands. I think he's a perfect fit for Indianapolis. I love what I see from Cole Kmet. I was thinking about, oh no, let me see what quarterbacks are on the board. I didn't like what kind of quarterbacks were on the board at the time. So I'm going Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame.
Okay. I love it, man. That's a great pick. It's kind of actually funny because the next pick I have is a tight end as well. I'm going Hunter Bryant, and I think that he's a guy that I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said I love it.
Oh, cool. So he's a guy that's had some potential, he's had some injury history with his knees. So he'll have to be checked out there. But if he checks out, man, I was kind of looking at some scouting reports about him. People are saying he's basically just a big slot receiver in the pros. And so that's great because, he complements Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox so well, a receiving tight end. He's a guy that, he doesn't necessarily have the greatest size, but he's a guy, man, that he has playmaking ability, and that's something that the Colts need. That's kind of why I went back-to-back kind of wide receiver, tight end. I think the Colts just need to get more explosive plays. And I was looking, I was curious. I was like, I wonder where the Colts were in yards after the catch last year, and they were 26th in the league last year in yards after catch. And so adding two explosive players back-to-back makes a lot of sense for me, and pairing that with a new quarterback makes a lot of sense to me as well. And so that's why I got, Jordan Love number one, and then I added some weapons for Love, and then also getting Ross Blacklock. And so, I think that the crazy thing is, man, I was kind of looking at some stuff on Bryant. He averaged 16.4 yards per catch during his college career. That's nuts. Crazy. And he's just a guy, man, that he has good hands. He's a guy that he can get open, which is huge, obviously. And he has a lot of athletic ability. And so I go Hunter Bryant there at 75, unless you trade up for something. But yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, without any trades, that's my 3-round mock draft. Who do you have there at your final pick there, round 3?
Man, I gotta say, I love that Hunter Bryant. Or not Hunter Bryant. Wait, you did go Hunter Bryant, right?
I did.
Yeah. Man, I watched this tape, dude, and when you look at it, that 16 yards a catch, that just shows you how fast he is getting down the field and what he can do after the catch. Going to his 40 time, it was a 4.75, and that's crazy. Like, Daniel Jeremiah even said the same thing that we basically said it at the same time when he got done running the 40. 4.75? That is not possible. That's not possible. Cole Kmet ran faster than him.
Right.
4.75, that does not speak volume to how fast he is. He plays so much faster on the field. Like you said, great hands, basically a slot receiver. And that's what I think that can just be so good for the Colts. Now, I'll say this for my number 75. Last year, we went a whole lot of defense in the draft. Got Bobby Okereke, got Rock Ya-Sin, Gary Green, Kari Willis, Marvell Tell. We got these guys. And in this draft, I think needs to be more focused on offense. So at number 75, I'm going Anthony Gordon out of Washington State.
Okay.
I think he's a very underrated quarterback. I do not know for the life of me how he's not graded higher than Jalen Hurts, higher than Jake Fromm. I don't understand it. He showed better footwork at the combine. His balls were accurate. They had velocity. The corner routes, he nailed it on. Him and Justin Herbert were probably the best at the corner routes. And when I look at Anthony Gordon, man, I definitely think he is a guy that you can win a Super Bowl with. He is a guy, if you want to throw the football, he can definitely do it for you. He can definitely do it. I mean, he played one season at Washington State, threw a whole lot. But people say, look at his stats. He played at Washington State. They're inflated. They always throw the football. And I'm just like, well, you're doing the wrong thing. You're looking at the stats. I'm looking at the film. You look at the film and you see the accuracy in these throws. I'm not sure if you have studied Anthony Gordon at all, Cody, but when you look at those throws, those dimes, they are just right on the money. The wide receiver is locked, like he cannot get away from the corner. But Anthony Gordon throws the ball right where he needs to throw it. I don't know why Anthony Gordon is graded as a third-round quarterback. I don't know how he's not a first-rounder. Maybe it's the in-depth things that I don't look at, like Jeremiah, Matt Miller, these guys look at. But, man, Anthony Gordon, you got to get a quarterback at some point. And like you say, you got Jordan Love in the first round. I'm taking Anthony Gordon in the third round. I still think that you're still getting a quality quarterback either way it goes. I just like me some Anthony Gordon, man. I don't know why. I think he's one of my favorite players in the draft at quarterback position. Jordan Love, Justin Herbert are probably tied for my number one. When I look at Jalen Hurts, don't see too much. He did show a good combine, but I still cannot ignore that game film where it matters. So
right.
That's our 3-round mock draft. The way it's looking, regardless of how it goes, whether if it's mine, yours, or Chris Ballard's, the Colts are in good hands either way.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that they, based off of our two drafts, Colts need to add some weapons to their offense. I think that's pretty clear. Need to add some weapons there, some more explosive players, and also we think they need to address that defensive tackle position. That 3-tech I think is right now wide open and really needs to be addressed this offseason. So. Yeah, man, that I love it. I love it. We were pretty close on as far as what we thought the Colts needed, even though we kind of varied a little bit on who they selected. But I love it, man. That's great.
Definitely. Well, I think that does it. We had a pretty good show. Gave the followers some good insight. You got anything else for us?
No, man, but I'd love to hear, some of our followers and everybody kind of hear your 3-round mock draft. It's probably going to be different than ours, but we love to hear your feedback and what you guys think. And we'd just love to hear what you guys think the Colts should do at 13 and all those other picks there. But no, man, I'm excited, man. The draft's coming up quicker and quicker. Free agency's coming up quicker and quicker. It's always exciting when this part of the year happens. The draft's probably one of my favorite things throughout the year, to really sit down for a couple days and just watch it. And it's so much fun. I love it.
Definitely, man. I definitely can't wait. I just wanted to hurry up, man. It's already March 6th. We're 12 days away from free agency.
Yeah.
I'm excited, man. I really am. I just can't wait, man. I want to be I don't even want to do anything in free agency. I just want to sit in the office and just watch Chris Ballard work. That's all I want to do. Just sit there. I'm not even going to say a word. I just want to sit there and just watch him.
Yeah.
Just be like, wow.
It's exciting, man.
All right. Well, if you don't have anything, I don't have anything else either. Thank you for tuning in for another edition of the Colts Brawl podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. If you want to follow the Colts Brawl Twitter, you can find Cody Felger on Twitter. You can find myself on Twitter. So definitely, if you want to go ahead and give your handle, Cody, that would be great.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at CPFelger55.
Awesome. And I am at Underdog Sports 4. So that's where I'm going to be at. I guess that'll do it. So would really appreciate to hear your feedback, guys. Y'all have a great week. Stay blessed and go Colts. Take care.